we have Jamie Kirkpatrick from TTC Riders. Again, thanks for being patient there.
So thank you all for coming out. TTC Riders is a group that seemed to form actually now around the same time as Fair. We were upset at the fact that they decided to hike fares 25 cents. Any fare hike is unfair at this point. Ridership is at an all-time high. We have to find a way to fund the system that's not on the backs of riders, and I think there's some great ideas discussed today. So I'll try and speak a little bit more into the microphone. It's great to have so many people turn out on a Saturday afternoon. TTC Riders as a group we've got some literature off to the side. I'd invite you to take a look at it during the break. But we feel that we want to build a TTC that works with and for transit riders and works for everyone. It's pretty simple. We have been, and we have a vision that basically says public transit should be based on the following principles. It should have fair and affordable fares, should build modern, fast transit to all corners of the city as quickly as possible, should make public transit fully accessible transit, should have frequent service that connects all of our neighborhoods, should be guided by environmental sustainability, and must include respect for frontline TTC workers and respect for fellow TTC riders. And I think most folks in this room would agree to those types of ideas. In terms of the questions that I was meant to answer, the biggest challenge I see to working in transit right now, as a lot of the points have been raised, is just the fact that there's just about as much misinformation as there is actual fact being talked about in our city right now. And I thought the gentleman from Occupy gave a great example of how that has been framed. And the positive situation is that we can fix that by just continuing to have meetings like this and having to have people talk and challenge misinformation when we hear it. It's great that people want subways. I would love a subway that came to my front door. I stepped out of that, perhaps not actually, because you don't get too much sunlight when you're underground in subways all the time. But the short little narrative and sound bites is not how you plan transit. You can't plan by sound bite, and that's what we're discovering a year and a bit into the current mayor's mandate. It's fine to say things that sound nice, but when you actually have to do something about it, the wheels sort of come off of that plan. And folks from, we keep saying the suburbs, folks from the suburbs, we're all actually in one city now, whether we like it or not, we're all together here. And we all have unique challenges depending on the part of that city that we live in. And it's absolutely right that we have not seen the type of transit development that's necessary in the outer parts of Toronto that have existed in the downtown part of Toronto. Largely it's because there's a heck of a lot of people in a small space downtown, and so there's subways there because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people using them every hour. To build a subway, and I didn't think I would talk about subways versus LRT, but to build a subway into a relatively suburban neighborhood is not the first move I would make if I was making all the decisions on transit. And I would take it along the lines that, again, what do you need? People in Scarborough, people in Etobicoke, people in parts of North York, they need to move. They need to be able to get around. And right now, the only way they can do that reliably is if they pay $8,000 or $10,000 a year and own a car. It's probably low. I'm not sure. I haven't had to account all of that yet. But they could move very easily if they had public transit that worked. Not public transit that required you to pay $3 to get on a bus that'll drive you in the wrong direction that you want to go, so you can transfer to a bus that'll eventually take you down where you want to go, and then you transfer again. It's not really fair. So there's been a lot of discussion, and there's a plan that can help start to fix that. And it was approved by the majority of our representatives at council. It's to build something called light rail transit. Not trolley cars, not horse and buggies, not even streetcars, but light rail transit, something that most of the rest of the world has been doing for decades. And we build a lot of those machines in Canada. So it's time we started putting them on our streets.
Here, here.
And so I didn't bring a lot of props, but light rail transit is essentially a subway that goes on the road. It has that it's the capacity between a streetcar, which I know there aren't a lot of out in Scarborough. In fact, there aren't any in Scarborough right now, and a subway. And it's great because it is a flexible technology. It allows people to get out of buses and onto something that'll move them more quickly. And if it's built the way it's proposed, it won't actually get in the way of anyone's car. That's another bit of misinformation that's constantly being talked about, is I don't want streetcars down the middle of my road causing traffic. Nobody wants that either, and that's not what anybody's proposing. We're proposing, and we being now the City of Toronto and parts of the province, to build a network of light rail vehicles that operate, yes, in the middle of the road, but in a separate section of road, so they don't interfere with cars. Cars, and if you have to drive a car, you could still drive in 2 or 3 lanes on either side of these evil light rail vehicles that will operate down the middle of the road. Some people are very upset about the fact that they want to turn left whenever they can now, and how sometimes these light rail vehicles will interfere with that. That's true. But anybody who has been up behind someone making a left turn when there's 50 or 100 cars, buses, or what have you behind them, recognize that the imbalance there maybe isn't the way to go. Maybe the single occupancy vehicle that wants to make a left turn whenever they want should take a back seat, or at least 2 more turns, instead of causing traffic congestion. I'm going all over the place here. Let's focus back on the question. I think misinformation and unwillingness to speak up to that misinformation is one of the biggest challenges transit faces, really any issue faces, but the transit issue in our city right now. And I think meetings like this help. I think leaving meetings like this and going to other meetings and talking to friends and neighbors and not letting the conversation end at 3:30 is also something that will help, because when that happens, all you do is get more frustrated, because you leave a meeting like this, you hear some truth, you accept some truth, and then you go back into the real world where no one talks like that anymore. They just say, subways. Subways are great. We want subways. Let's do that now. Anyone who's against subways is a dirty commie. That's the type of mentality that doesn't help anybody, and that's the type of rhetoric that is finally starting to not work. And we have to keep ensuring we speak against it so it doesn't work. So one plea I'd ask is, if you consider during the break looking at some of the little pieces of paper I brought a membership form. Take it home or peruse it or fill it out here. Basically, it's the same old form that I'm going to update very soon with the help of other folks on the TTC Riders panel. But basically, just if you're interested in joining a movement of transit riders that's trying to make the system better and include all of our perspectives in making that system better, sign up and join us. We're at an interesting point now where we're trying to go from being a group of groups to an actual citywide organization that will have specific proactive campaigns rather than reactive campaigns, and hopefully become what we would like to be, which is a voice for transit riders. Every day, 1.7 million rides are taken on the TTC. So it's a lot of voices, and even if we're underground, we still deserve to be heard. And so I think one way to do that is following on the example. Someone's mentioned the LA Bus Riders Union. There's other groups like that. In New York, there's a group called the Strap Hangers that's been around for more than 30 years that helped turn the New York subway system from, well, what I understand was a bit of a scary place that had a lot of graffiti and grime, to something now that people feel comfortable using. And that happened because people spoke up and said, what we want in our transit system is a safe environment that'll get us places that's affordable. We can do that here too. And so I would encourage you to consider joining our group, to consider volunteering with our group, and getting out and talking to other folks. Particularly, yes, in the outer parts of Toronto, because those are the areas that are being inundated with misinformation. In Scarborough, for 30 years, people in Scarborough have been told that they deserve a subway and they're going to get a subway. And times have unfortunately changed we can't build subways as easily as we could have 30 and 40 years ago. We just don't have the ability to do it. It's become cost prohibitive. And a lot of the growth that I think everybody can imagine, a lot of the jobs and growth that were supposed to happen in North York and in Scarborough and Etobicoke just didn't happen. And that's part of what's causing all the problems that we're talking about today, but it's also the fact you can't build multi-billion-dollar transit to an area that's going to not be used by about 30,000 people an hour. And you know, it's not about deserving something, it's about what's the best way to move the most amount of people. And I feel that the plan put forward by council that will build light rapid transit on Finch Avenue to replace one of the busiest buses in the city, the 36 Finch that Councillor Crisanti's afraid to ride, is a great idea. I think that building an LRT connection, light rail transit connection from Mel Lastman's subway to the edges of Scarborough is a great idea, because that'll mean people all along there will be able to move and not be stuck in traffic on the 85 and 89 Shepherd bus. Maybe there's not any. Is that the one that was called too? Okay. And then, you know, I think that we should replace the RT with something that actually works. These are all things that are funded. Oh, and then the big one, right, Eglinton. There was never, in the last 5 years, no one's talked about a subway on Eglinton. Back when they built the Shepherd subway, they talked a lot about an Eglinton subway. In fact, we spent 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million? I don't remember how many millions.
100 million.
$100 million to dig a hole and then fill it in.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's not helped anybody.
Mike Harris spent it on every.
Well, it's true, Mike Harris is the one who ultimately killed it, but there was lots of bad politics that led to that situation. And what we need to do is get past that and build something so that we can actually help the people instead of having everybody just feel bad about what didn't happen. And that's what we can do. In the next 10 years, we could have about 52 kilometers of light rail built, provided we don't let our political leaders in Toronto, Queen's Park or City Hall, wuss out and not do it. Our money has been put on the table to do this. We just have to tell them to keep it up. And in 10 years, when we're all meeting again, we'll get here a lot easier. We'll have friends from parts of the city that couldn't come downtown because of the traffic and the frustrations. They'll get here easier too. We'll be talking about the next phase of transit lines that need to be built. We'll be enjoying the fact that the air is a bit cleaner because of all this work we're doing. And I think that I encourage people to keep positive and not despair, because we're on the cusp of finally having something happen. We have the tide turning at City Hall. We have a government at Queen's Park that's not stable, so if we speak loudly enough, they have to do what we want as well. So we're pretty much in excellent situations in Ontario and Toronto to make these things finally happen. And we just need to use our voice. I know there was another question I was supposed to answer, but maybe we can talk more about that in the break. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep it up. Thank you so much for coming out. If you have any questions, I'm here. Everybody who spoke is here. We've got a little bit of information. We'd love to hear your information. And let's just keep building a better city.
Good work.